Here we go then. A new Premier League season is upon us and the Matchbook Weekend Football podcast returns to cover it. Same sort of thing as last year. We'll be providing a podcast every week, looking ahead to the weekend, looking for value, looking for insight and interest, I suppose. But we've also got bonus video capabilities this year. You can find us on all the podcast platforms, as always, but on video as well, if you so wish. You can catch us on the Matchbook YouTube channel, the Twitter or Facebook pages. Just search for Team Matchbook. My name's Ali Maxwell, and I've got quite the team with me looking ahead to opening weekend from the Premier League coming up. I've got two experts with me, and their task to provide insight and to find value in the betting markets. Adrian Clarke returns, former footballer, current writer, presenter, analyst, and all-round football expert. We've signed him to a new deal this season. And Adrian, it's great to have you with us. Excited for the new season?
Oh, of course I am. Yeah, no, it's really exciting prospects. We all think that it's going to be a two-horse race, but I'm sure there'll be plenty more twists and turns. This particular transfer window, I think, is showcasing that with a number of the other clubs going big on their acquisitions. So yeah, another exciting campaign ahead. It's going to be a long road, but a fun one, I think.
And of course, Mark O'Hare joins us. Mark was part of our Premier League discussion panel last week, so we've got an idea of some of his thoughts, but plenty more to come. Mark, all set for this?
Yeah, for sure, Ali. It's been a reasonably long wait since the end of last season back in May. So delighted now we're up and running, and here's to a good and successful season.
Amen to that. Look, before we start, guys, let me tell you about Matchbook's offer. It's a £10 risk-free bet if you sign up to Matchbook today. For full terms and conditions and details, head to offer.matchbook.com. We must stress this is for over 18s only, and request that you make sure that you're gamble aware, make sure you understand the risks around gambling. We're going to preview 4 games from the Premier League this weekend, and then maybe have a touch on some of the other stuff that's going on across Europe this weekend. We have to start with Manchester United against Chelsea. I've got the prices from the Matchbook site as we record in front of me here. Man United, the home team, 2.21 here. Chelsea at 3.64 and the draw 3.5. You can get Manchester United minus a quarter of a goal at 1.92 and Chelsea plus a quarter of a goal at 2.03. Over 2.5 goals, 2.06, and under 2.5 goals, 1.89. Quite a tricky one to feel confident about, I think, at this stage, with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's Manchester United, his first full season in charge, and Chelsea under Frank Lampard. Adrian, I wanted to start with you and Manchester United. What sort of state do we find the home team in heading into the season?
It's a difficult question, isn't it? Pre-season results have been pretty good, I think, largely positive for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and the acquisition of Harry Maguire has obviously given them a lift at just the right time ahead of the season. They desperately needed a leader at the back. They were pretty weak there. So when you factor in that they've got Aaron Wan-Bissaka as well, they should be able to keep a lot more clean sheets this season. That was the problem last year, wasn't it? They just didn't keep anywhere near enough shutouts. So they'll be more solid, that's for sure. But it just feels like there's a lot of work to do for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I'm not able to sit here and predict that they're suddenly going to pick up and be challenging for the title or even third spot. I would say that they'll do ever so well to get into the top 4. But look, we'll have to give them a chance to see how the new season goes for them. But yeah, Harry Maguire will help, but he alone, I don't think, will turn their fortunes around.
It seems like as we head into the season, still quite a lot of uncertainty, for example, surrounding the future of Romelu Lukaku. That's a situation that's really deteriorated in the last few weeks and sees them head into the campaign without him available, and therefore presumably with Marcus Rashford as their number one striker. Mark, how are you analysing this Manchester United team? We saw a bit of them, didn't we, under Solskjaer last season? So some data to work with, I suppose. What are you expecting from them?
More of the same, really. I mean, I know they've strengthened the defence. Maguire and Wan-Bissaka will obviously help that. As Adrian says, much more leadership there. Maguire says he's fit and available, ready to start on Sunday, which is obviously a bonus for United. But I'd expect it to take time. the Paul Pogba situation is still kind of circling around. He missed the last pre-season game, says he's going to be fit and available for this weekend, but you can't help but think he's still angling for a move away. Clubs like Real Madrid would certainly want him, but they've got their own issues to sort out as well. So to me, it's still quite an uninspiring, quite a bloated squad, an unbalanced squad as well. So I still put them in the sort of battle towards a top 6 spot. I wouldn't even put them in massive contention for the top 4 right now. I need to see a lot more evidence to suggest they're good enough to step up. You look to their opposition, who some might say are in a worse shape with losing their manager Maurizio Sarri, Frank Lampard coming in, the transfer ban, etc. I still think Chelsea are in better shape to finish above United this season, and I think there's a couple of teams below United who'll be looking at them and thinking they're quite vulnerable and eyeing up that top 6 spot as well. So I still need to see some evidence to suggest that they're good enough and strong enough to secure a top 6 spot, let alone a top 4 place.
Yeah, we're going to talk later about some of the teams that might be looking hungrily at 6th spot and wondering if someone, Manchester United or otherwise, might be vulnerable there. Adrian, it's not a dissimilar story at Chelsea, at different circumstances, of course, but still uncertainty, right? A top 4 finish last season, a Europa League win, and that now seems almost a million miles away when you consider that the new manager is Frank Lampard. There is no Eden Hazard. The transfer ban that Mark alluded to has meant very few incomings this summer. Of course, the Pulisic deal was done early, and Kovacic signs permanently as well. How do you think they're shaping up?
It's exciting, I think, for Chelsea fans that the young players will get a chance this season. I certainly feel that they'll be freshened up. My worry is how are they going to cope without Hazard? Goodness me, I think this is the guy that carried them really last season and in a number of other campaigns as well. So he's a huge loss. They look light up top, don't they, guys? I mean, Abraham has been given a lot of game time in pre-season and done okay, I think, by all accounts. But is he the man to spearhead the attack of a top 4 side in the Premier League? I have my reservations, I've got to say. That leaves Giroud, who is still a good player, clearly. Batshuayi. That's it, really. I mean, I can't see beyond it. So obviously Pulisic has come in. That'll offer a goal threat from wide areas. But yeah, they look weaker up top. David Luiz's impending departure, I think, will hurt them more than a lot of Chelsea fans think. I think he's not the perfect defender, that's for sure. But by and large, he was pretty consistent last season. So no, they'll be slightly weaker. But Frank Lampard still inherits a strong squad, doesn't it? Goodness me. Particularly in midfield, where I think they'll be really strong again this year.
Yeah, it looks like the midfield in pre-season has been one of the real positives from what we've seen just in a couple of games, a handful of games. And Mark, in terms of this game this weekend on Sunday afternoon at Old Trafford, any betting angles that have caught your eye? Anything that you're looking at? It's obviously difficult before the season's kicked off. We haven't, as we've discussed, uncertainty really sort of covers both of these teams. So in a betting sense, what are you looking for?
Well, you started the conversation by saying it's a tricky game to call, and I think you're absolutely right. The odds imply these two teams are rated around the same level, which I think is quite interesting, really, because United went off at 2.77 for the same game in April against Chelsea at Old Trafford. It ended 1-1. They're now a lot shorter than that, around 2.25, 2.3. What's really changed in that sort of couple of months? I don't think there's a huge amount. Obviously, the issues that we talked about with Chelsea, United have strengthened slightly, but I think that's a significant shift, really. United have actually only won twice in the last 13 against Chelsea, are unbeaten in 6 at home against them, but draws have been relatively prevalent. I think this game's got a very draw bias towards it. If you look towards last season, United only won once against the Big Six, failed to beat any of their rivals at Old Trafford. Chelsea fared a little bit better, but their away record under Sarri was really, really poor. 1 point away at the top 6, winless away at the top half. So issues there for both teams. How are Chelsea going to react without Hazard? He averaged around 0.7 expected goals and assists per 90, which is a significant amount, really. Pulisic is a good player. He's got the potential to be a great player, but it's a big ask for him to step up. If you read the sort of reporters on the Chelsea beat, they reckon Lampard's still mulling over his options at centre-back, in attack, and also whether Kante is going to be fit to play to start the season. Looks like a 4-2-3-1 system, which he employed at Derby as well. So I think we know what we're going to get really from Chelsea. Well, I do anyway. United, I think, are a bit more of a an unknown quantity. If you look back to last season, 53% of the 30 all Big Six clashes were won by the home team, which is, just better than an odds-on shot, really. If you look over the last 5 seasons and take the first 12 games out, and look at those first 12 games, home sides in all Big Six games only won 37%, 35% ended in draws. So I get the impression this could be one of those kind of ties where it must not lose, but at the same point, I also kind of want to give a bit of a nod towards goals, because over 2.5 does look a little bit underrated to me. Odds against BTTS is 1.8ish, which I think is probably fair enough. But just again, looking towards last season, and the evidence we definitely do have, only Bournemouth and Arsenal's matches had more goals per game than United. Overs landed 68% of the time. Same figure for BTTS. 7 of 11 home games under Solskjaer for United went over 2.5. Only West Ham conceded more goals in the top half. And then you look away to Chelsea's games as well. 63% of their away games went over 2.5 goals. Lampard's promised to play this expansive attacking football style, a bit more direct compared to what Sarri's style was too. So, there's hope there for a goal-heavy game. There's hope there for entertainment. And if you look at Chelsea's defensive record in pre-season, which I don't tend to read too much into, the last 3 games conceded 3 goals against Reading and RB Salzburg, and 2 goals against Gladbach. So, I'm hopeful this game could be watchable, but I think there's a strong draw bias.
Adrian, any predictions on this one?
Oh yeah, I'm listening to Mark there intently. I did fancy the draw. 2 apiece is suddenly looking very interesting, isn't it? I've got to say, if I had to pick a winner, I'm leaning more towards Chelsea here than Manchester United. Ross Barkley's been in sparkling form, I know, during pre-season, and Frank Lampard, of course, went to Old Trafford last season and won, didn't he, with Derby County? And there was a cheeky little stat that hopefully you'll enjoy that I read this week. That's 11 times Chelsea have started the season on a Sunday and they've never lost. So they like their Sunday starts.
Like that a lot. Yes, good to reference Frank Lampard's Derby County's victory at Old Trafford last season. What an impressive win that was. Let's move on now to Newcastle and Arsenal. Newcastle, the home team, available at 4.8. Arsenal 1.81. The draw is 3-1. At Newcastle with 3/4 of a goal on the handicap at 1.87, and Arsenal at minus 0.75, 2.08. Over 2 3/4 goals, 2.05, and the under 2 3/4 goals, 1.87. Adrian, you're a former Arsenal player. You're a current Arsenal guru. We're going to start with you. What are Arsenal looking like heading into this season? A little bit of late transfer business, it looks like. We're recording this morning of transfer deadline day, so not a lot of done deals yet, but it's been an interesting summer at the club.
Oh, big time. Yeah, no, I've seen every minute of pre-season and we're pretty positive, actually. Not perfect, that's for sure, particularly at the back. That won't come as a surprise to our listeners or viewers now. So no, they've looked open at the back. Individual mistakes have been fairly frequent, particularly with balls played through the centre halves, have been caught square and flat-footed. But I tell you, the star of pre-season has been Aubameyang. He's been absolutely outstanding, either as a wide player or down the middle. So when you think about, and I'm not quite sure if Lacazette's going to be fit for this opener, so it wouldn't surprise me if Aubameyang starts up top. When Arsenal counter at pace, they're going to look to spin him in behind for fun. And let's be honest, Newcastle at the back are not the quickest. So I do think that Arsenal have the tools to really hurt Newcastle in this opener. But yeah, no, it's pretty exciting. I don't know how many of the new faces will start in this game. Ceballos, I think, will be on the bench. Pepe, I would imagine, would be the same because we haven't seen him yet. He's not featured in any of the friendlies. So no, I'd say overall Arsenal have looked fantastic going forward. Their usual selves at the back. So I would expect both teams to score, but I would fancy the Gunners.
Well, it's exciting for the neutral, that's for sure. And maybe a bit of optimism for Newcastle. A few attacking additions in the last few weeks. Of course, it's yet to be seen how they will look under Steve Bruce. In terms of playing style, he's not a manager that has, to my eyes, an obvious system, an obvious philosophy on the pitch, and had a fair amount of attacking talent at Aston Villa, of course, in the Championship when they were favourites to win the majority of games that they played, and in an attacking sense was always a bit of a letdown, to my eyes anyway. Dean Smith turn things around fairly quickly. Just on Ceballos, I might as well use some of my experience from the summer. I was at the Under-21 European Championships, and he, along with actually Bielik of Poland, who's just left Arsenal, was one of the sort of key performers. I watched a game between Spain and Poland where Poland basically played with a back five, sat on the edge of their box, 4 midfield players making it difficult and trying to stop Spain playing through them, through the middle. And those teams can be very hard to break down. Poland had gone into that game with 2 wins already and had played very effectively in that system. And you wondered whether they might keep Spain at bay, but Ceballos was the reason why they didn't. His ability to twist and turn on the edge of the box to get away from defenders, it was actually Hazard-esque, the way that he drew men to him, but also with the vision to slip a quick pass when he had drawn the men into a teammate in space. And I think Spain won 5 or 6-0 in the end. I'd had a few beers, so I can't remember exactly. And but Ceballos, even so, stood out so much. So it strikes me that if Newcastle, if Benitez was still in charge, we would know the sort of way that they'd set up to try and frustrate Arsenal. Obviously, with Bruce in charge, let's see how they play. But if they do sit deep and pack the defence, Ceballos could be a key man in unlocking that defence.
Definitely, I would completely agree with that. I think we will see him come on in the second half. I don't think that he's had enough pre-season action to start, but the play you describe is the one that I've seen during pre-season. He goes past players, very well balanced, and Arsenal have struggled sometimes, haven't they, against stubborn opposition for ideas, for inventiveness, particularly since Santi Cazorla left. And I do feel that Ceballos is a bit of a line breaker, like Cazorla was. So yeah, excited about his potential. And I do think ultimately, especially in the games that Arsenal play against sides in the lower half of the table, I think Ceballos will get a run out and he could make a difference.
Mark, I know from the Premier League discussion panel that we had last week that you, along with some of the others, not particularly hot on Newcastle heading into the season, not expecting them to be better under Steve Bruce, shall we say, than they were under Rafa Benitez. Is there any interest in just getting with Arsenal here in that sense? 1.81, 1.82, the away team here?
Not really for me. I think if you look back to last season under Emery, they were actually pretty effective at the bottom half. 7 wins, 2 draws, 1 defeat. Scored at least twice in 8 of those games as well. I think they're very fair favourites. I think they're very fair odds-on favourites too. But there's something about Arsenal, especially on the opening day, away from home, being odds-on, which puts me off. I think they've lost 4 of their last 6 opening day games, and I know most of those games are being against much more difficult opposition. But I think there's a better way of getting on side in this game, and that's with the overs, which is around a similar price, really, 1.8ish or up. We've already everyone knows Arsenal's issues are at the back. Even if they do get the David Luiz and Tierney deals over the line, Tierney's not going to be fit. Holding and Bellerin are still out, so defensively there's real concerns there. Last season they conceded over 1.5 XG per game on average, which was the 10th worst in the division. Just the 1 away clean sheet as well. And it should be really good fun for neutrals to watch this year because they're just so top heavy. A real shame really if Ceballos and Pepe don't start the season, as well as Lacazette, because that sort of forward line is absolutely mouth-watering. But Newcastle, you look back to last season, actually failed to win their first 10 games. They lost their first 5 at home as well. Then they picked up 1.5 points per game from the last 28 games to survive with room to spare, really. And I know Perez and Rondon had gone, but Joelinton from Hoffenheim, I've seen quite a lot of him. He's a player who will bring players into the game, a lot like Rondon, really. Will be quite effective in that sort of focal point position. Not the clinical goal scorer at all, but Alan Saint-Maximin as well from Nice. Very exciting addition. Not quite your Hatem Ben Arfa in terms of a bit of a head case, but he's got real potential there to be inventive, be creative too. I just wonder if those two are going to take time to adjust to the Premier League. Looking at Bruce himself, I think he did a decent job at Sheffield Wednesday, came in, simplified the process in 2019. Quite an old-fashioned attack, really, organised long ball team towards Stephen Fletcher. I suspect he's going to employ something similar here with Joelinton leading the line, really. But for me, Newcastle's real issues are at the back. The data suggested they should have conceded at least 15 goals more than they did last year. They conceded at least twice or more in 9 of their 10 home games against the top half too. So they're going to come under pressure in this game. I fancy this Arsenal team to get a couple of goals, but there's absolutely no way I could rely on them to keep a clean sheet or even win the match at odds on. So for me, overs is the way to go.
Overs from Mark. Adrian, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, it all makes sense what Mark was saying there. Yeah, no, I found Lacazette, there is a chance he'll play. He was rested for the Barcelona friendly defeat, which was good. One pattern that I would point out from pre-season is that Arsenal have been fast starters. So if you're looking to get on them to be leading at half time, that might be a good shout. They've had a lot of early goals. But unfortunately, the pattern has been that they've given up those leads. They've squandered them. It happened against Real Madrid. It happened against Lyon. It also happened against Barcelona. So fingers crossed from a Gunners' perspective that that's not the case this weekend, but it's definitely something to consider when you're thinking about placing a bet.
Okay, Leicester City against Wolves. This is a really tasty opening weekend fixture. Leicester are the home team here. They are available at 2.3 on the Matchbook site. Wolves 3.68 and at the draw 3.34. So Leicester minus a quarter of a goal on the handicap 1.92 and Wolves with a quarter of a goal 2.03. Over 2.25 goals 1.94 and the under 2.25 goals 1.97. So a low goal expectancy. These two, along with Everton, we should mention, are seen as the next best by the bookies heading into the season. Outside the top six, there's a very clear group of three teams, and it's Leicester, Wolves and Everton. To get into the top six, Matchbook have Everton at 4.5, Leicester 4.9 and Wolves 5.4. So immediately this is an interesting game from that perspective. Mark, I'm going to start with you and Wolves. With them in Europa League action this season, how much does that concern you in terms of their league prospects? They were a team that I think you fancied quite heavily going into last season and probably did you fairly well over the course of the campaign.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something to bear in mind. Wolves' squad was very thin last year, but they were very, very fortunate with injuries and suspensions. Was it the first 10 or 11 games? Nuno fielded the same 11 for every match, which is unheard of. It's not going to happen again. It's not just the extra games, it's the extra fatigue of travel, really. We look at them coming into this weekend. They're in Yerevan on Thursday night for the Europa League qualifier. It's 32 degrees out in Armenia. It's a 5-6 hour flight. You just listen to what Nuno's saying. It's difficult. He knows it's difficult. They're flying back immediately after the game. He's talked about having to try and rush those players through their recovery on the flight home just to get them ready for Sunday. And that's just, we've not even really started the season yet. So if they do get into the group stage, I love the Europa League to bits, but you do get these kind of teams from far-flung places, and I guess the extra fatigue, the extra travel is going to play a serious part of them. Not just in terms of conditioning either. You think about the preparation that goes into Premier League matches, and Nuno's an expert in setting his team up for opponents. He had full game weeks last year, 7 days to prepare in terms of recovery, and then sort of outline opposition weaknesses, and then employing those tactics. He's not going to have that this year if they do get into the group stage. So I think it's only realistic to expect a regression for Wolves, and I see everyone kind of putting them in as seventh and finishing as best for the rest again. I'd be very surprised if they finish seventh again. I'd actually be looking at sort of bottom half quotes for a bit of value for Wolves this season.
Interesting. That's really interesting. Adrian, in terms of Leicester, how do you think they're shaping up heading into this season? Obviously lost Harry Maguire recently, just towards the end of the window for them. But they've been making plenty of moves before that in order to bring players in.
Well, yeah, I'm a big fan of Brendan Rodgers. I think he's constructing a really well-balanced side, exciting side as well. I love the fact that Tielemans came in. You've got Maddison that was already there. Ayoze Perez, for me, one of the more underrated players in the Premier League last season in terms of his impact off the ball. For me, Perez will be the new Okazaki, and I think he'll help out Vardy no end because he does so much dirty work. He scurries around, he wins the ball back, he hassles defenders in the way that Brendan Rodgers loves his players to do. So I think he's an absolute perfect fit for Leicester City under Rodgers. So now I think they're looking good. The big question mark is Maguire and what do they do in terms of replacing him? From what I hear and from what I've seen of their backups, they're not quite ready. So Evans, I would suggest, needs a new partner. Will Leicester get one today? We'll have to wait and see. There's no major talk about that. So I think they're looking fantastic apart from in the centre-back slot. That's the one concern. And I feel they are the ones best place to maybe challenge the top six. But hand on heart, I think it would be the same protagonists in that top six this year.
Mark, in betting terms for this one, anything that interests you, or is this more of a watching brief?
I think it's a watching brief. I think from the outside, it looks like the most interesting match of the weekend. But the Wolves issue, really, the 6,500 mile trip to Armenia, really does put me off it. Really, I can't think of anything worse preparation-wise for Wolves coming into the start of the season. I know they've got good competitive match practice from these Europa League qualifiers, but no one's going to want to have to fly to Armenia just a couple of days before their first game. You look at what happened to Burnley last season. I know it's a completely different scenario, but similarly small squad, started the season with 1 point from the first 5 games. I think it's one to sort of steer clear of. I like Leicester a lot. I echo everything that Adrian said as well. So, but Wolves only won 6 away games last season, which is quite surprising considering their season was deemed such a success. Just 6 away wins. Leicester actually have a bit of a knack for getting good results at home to top half teams. 8 wins from the last 13 against the top 10, and 5 of the last 10 against the top 10. They've won by at least 2 goals. So if I have to put something on the line, it would be a slight preference towards Leicester here, but just purely due to Wolves' preparation.
Yeah, I'd definitely go with Leicester as well. And Vardy is a player that likes the sun on his back. He scored 4 goals on the opening day in Premier League weekends, but in 4 different matches. So he's the kind of guy that often hits the ground running. I agree completely. Even if Wolves weren't making this trip, I would still fancy Leicester City, maybe to win to 0 in this particular game. So we'll have to wait and see.
Fantastic Vardy stat as well from Adrian there. We're going to finish with West Ham against Man City, the reigning champions, back-to-back champions, I should say. They travel to the London Stadium where they are heavy favourites, as you would expect, 1.26 as of this morning on the Matchbook site, 2 days out from the game. West Ham available at 11-1 and rising by the looks of things. The draw is available at 6-1. West Ham plus 1.75 on the handicap is 2.02. And Manchester City minus 1.75, 1.93. Goal line high, as you would expect for a Manchester City game. Over 3.25 goals, 2.04. And under 3.25 goals, 1.88. So, Adrian, we know it's tough to retain the title. Man City, the first team in 10 years to do so. How well do you think they're shaping up for 3 in a row?
Wow, they're shaping up pretty nicely, I would suggest. Obviously, the Sane injury isn't sounding too great, so that might be a blow for them. But no, they're an outstanding team, aren't they? They're one of the best, I think, in Premier League history. No question. There was very little between them and Liverpool last year. I don't see the situation changing. I love them going forward. I think Bernardo Silva might be even better this year. Raheem Sterling, all the signs suggest that he's not going to stop scoring. He's been very productive in pre-season. And Kevin De Bruyne, who was out a lot last season, he's bound to be better, isn't he? So yeah, I think they're going to be fantastic. Rodri looks a good fit. So not too much to worry about, I don't think, if you're a City fan. But this is the best time to play them, isn't it? Clearly. They weren't brilliant in the Community Shield at all. I thought Liverpool were the stronger team, unexpectedly. So if I'm a Hammers fan, I'm thinking, let's go for it in this game. I don't think there's any point sitting back. They've tried that in this fixture in the recent past and got absolutely obliterated, haven't they? Was it 4-0, 4-0, 4-1, 5-0 in the FA Cup? So my policy, if I'm Pellegrini, and I've got a new strike force of Haller and Fornals, who I think will play together. And then in behind them, you've got Rice and Wilshere, potentially, Anderson and Lanzini. That's a lot of creativity. You don't want to spend that. You don't want to spend too long without the ball. Now, that's inevitable against City. So I think Pellegrini will tell his players to get in amongst it, try and take the game by the scruff of the neck and play in their half. If they do, I fancy West Ham to score in this game because they didn't look brilliant at the back. Certainly didn't look 100% City last weekend.
If they do, Adrian, I think this might be the highest scoring Premier League game of all time with the lineup that you've picked for West Ham there.
Well, I go on that based on last weekend's friendly against Athletic Bilbao. Now, they might change it, but a lot of managers like to pick their 11, don't they, the weekend before the big weekend. And that's the team he picked. I do think West Ham will go with 4-4-2 or 4-4-1-1 a lot this season. It would be bold and it would be massively risky. What have they got to lose, really? I think in this match they need to go for it without being kamikaze, clearly.
Well, I'll be looking for the team news on the weekend, possibly looking at one of those very high overs bets. We're talking sort of over 5.5, something like that. Mark, in terms of West Ham, look, they finished 10th last season, top half finish. Are you expecting them to be better or worse this season?
Possibly slightly better. I think the 10th place flattered them last season. Watford's run to the FA Cup final saw them miss out on the top half. If Watford had been a bit more focused on the end of the season, West Ham would have been a bottom half team. Obviously, very exciting signings this summer in forward areas. Haller's a great player. I've seen a lot of him for Eintracht Frankfurt in the last year. Obviously, as Adrian's mentioned, all the glitzy names, Felipe Anderson, Yarmolenko, Pablo Fornals, Lanzini, etc., etc. They definitely can ruffle a few feathers. My issue with West Ham is defensively. Fabianski made more saves than any goalkeeper in the Premier League last year. West Ham actually only kept 7 clean sheets as well, regardless of Fabianski's saves. It's going to be very hard for him to replicate those numbers again. So I do expect a bit of a defensive downturn. They were pretty poor defensively anyway last year, conceded an average of 1.78 XG per game, which means they actually leaked 12 goals fewer than expected. So those improvements in defence haven't been made. They've improved the forward line. So it looks a little bit unbalanced to me at the moment, and I think that could be an issue.
So in terms of a selection or a mild fancy, maybe we could call it at this stage of the season, anything you're looking at here?
There was. It kind of flies in the face of what you guys are talking about, really, which Adrian's made a cracking point, really, about how to approach this game. And, I probably would have to reassess what I was thinking. I just went on the evidence of last year, and Pellegrini tended to batten down the hatches against the big boys, play on the counter and try and get a result, really. It hasn't really worked in the last 2 years for West Ham. 4 wins and 24 against the Big Six. Just the 1 point from 8 games against Man City and Liverpool in the last 2 years as well. For City, there's only so much you can sort of wax lyrical about them. 198 points from 228 in the last 2 years. Had a couple of wobbles at Palace and Newcastle last year, but more than often than not, they've been exceptional against non-Big Six teams. 49 wins, 5 draws, 2 defeats. 24 wins from 28 on the road. 18 of those 24 wins, they're ahead at half-time as well. So I've got a great record against West Ham too. But for me, it was just potentially looking towards the way Pellegrini might have approached this game. 7 of their last 10 at home to the Big Six went unders. 6 of those went under 1.5 goals as well. And obviously, you look at City coming into this game, weren't that great last weekend. Aguero and Gabriel Jesus have been having long summers with the Copa America as well. They're not going to be 100% either. So I do expect City to win this game reasonably narrowly, really. I think they'll keep possession very well, limit West Ham's chances. City had the best process in the last 2 years by a long stretch, even ahead of Liverpool. That's defensively as well as attacking wise. So they do hold possession. I think West Ham are going to have to work very, very hard to garner a few opportunities. And I think you look at that total goals line, under 3.25, around 1.9. Yeah, I can see something there. You make a full stakes profit on 0, 1 or 2 goals being scored, a half stakes profit if exactly 3 goals were scored. City can win this game 2-0, 3-0. I think we make money. So that's the way I'd be looking at it.
Yeah, okay, I like that. I'm going to make the executive decision that we are going to keep a very close eye on the team news for this game. We're going to keep a close eye on how we think Pellegrini might set up that West Ham team before making a strong decision on a goals bet. But interestingly, Adrian said he reckons the best time to play Man City. Mark, it feels like, you don't see this being an obviously huge win for them. So potentially a little tickle on West Ham on one of the handicap options as well. Adrian, anything to add in terms of predictions? I feel like we've given this one a good go.
I think so, yeah. I can't bet against Manchester City, despite what I've said. Yeah, look, Pellegrini may go true to form and set up defensively. I just feel that because it hasn't worked in the past, and because it's the opening day of the season, and because City, if they have a weakness, it is in defensive areas. I think surely he will be aware enough to maybe flip it on its head and be slightly more proactive. So that's where I'm coming from on it. I still think City will win. I'll go for City 3, West Ham 2.
There we go. Just before we leave you guys, we're going to ask Mark about outside of the Premier League, because he's a man that can spread his wings and find value across all of Europe and beyond sometimes as well. So ahead of this weekend, Mark, anything catching your eye from the continent?
Yeah, the French football season starts on Friday night as well. These are not massive plays, but opening weekend, I think there's an opportunity to get involved in a couple of games. Lyon v Monaco kicks things off on Friday night. A really exciting curtain raiser, to be fair. Lyon now under the tutelage of Silvino, the ex-Arsenal player. It's his first club management role. Juninho, the ex-free kick specialist, is now the sporting director there. So the two Brazilians in charge. There's a lot of hope, a lot of expectation that Lyon kick on and could be the best of the rest in France this season. They've certainly got plenty of attacking talent going forward. I know they've lost some key players, but they've replaced them very well this summer as well. And Monaco, obviously finished 17th last year, so big things are expected in this time with Jardim in charge from the start, kind of wiping away what happened last year. But I think there's real potential for goals in that game. You're looking around over 2.5 goals, just slightly odds on. I think if this game is being played in March or April, or even sort of December, January this time, the odds would be a lot shorter than that. And also Angers look very much underrated at home to Bordeaux. Paulo Sousa in charge of Bordeaux. They had a dreadful campaign, went through 3 coaches last year. Absolute rabble of the performances throughout the season. But Angers are a very difficult team to beat, especially at home. Have them off a sort of scratch start on the Asian handicap at home to Bordeaux. I think that's cracking value if you can get it from 1.7 upwards.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, guys. That's really whet the appetite for the opening weekend of the Premier League season. And for Mark there as well, we've got a little something extra. Just to run through what we have discussed. Manchester City against West Ham there. Team news very important in this one, guys. So keep your eyes peeled at 2 o'clock. We are not entirely sure whether to expect West Ham to sit in and try and limit City's goals, or whether to take them on and try and score a couple themselves. In terms of Manchester United against Chelsea, I think we were leaning towards overs in this game, and the same for Newcastle Arsenal. Over 2 3/4 goals in that one was available at 2.05. For Leicester Wolves, generally a watching brief between two really interesting sides who could sort of upset the elite this year, but a couple of reservations about both sides. Wolves and they're travelling for the Europa League, of course, and Leicester City heading into the season without Harry Maguire. But a little extra was a Jamie Vardy, keeping an eye on him. Such a good goal-scoring record in August. And then from Mark at the end there, Lyon and Monaco this weekend. We're looking at over 2.5 goals in that game. And Angers we like as well. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. Adrian, enjoy your weekend. Where will you be focusing this weekend?
Well, I'll be obviously following the Arsenal game closely. I'm also on co-comms duty for Bournemouth against Sheffield United, which I think is going to be an interesting game. I would fancy Bournemouth in that one. Callum Wilson, I think, is going to have another good season. Brilliant.
And Mark, enjoy the opening weekend of the Premier League. I'm sure we'll be chatting to you again soon.
Cheers, Ali. Look forward to it.
And thanks very much for listening, guys. We'll be back with the same sort of thing next week. We'll have a bit more current season knowledge and data to play with, and we look forward to joining you then.